Chapter 430. Hey. That auntie couldn't take it anymore and shouted, "My neighbors, come and see what kind of child she is. How can she talk like that? It's okay that she's fat, but I tried to persuade her, but she was so rude and unreasonable." Dream? Playing games is considered a dream? As soon as she said that, some people started to support her and craned their necks to look over. The eldest daughter of the Shui family is really getting worse and worse. I know, Mom. She used to volunteer to help our school's senior Jiang with his homework, and she fantasized about doing something with him. In the end, he was still scared away by her. She didn't even look at herself and dared to dream about others. It's the same now. She fantasizes about how good she is at playing games all day. Don't worry about her. How can a person like her have any future? Listening to the voices of discussion coming from all directions, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. Shui Yaoyao tightened her grip on the strap of her bag and didn't look back. She just wanted to stick to what she wanted. No matter what others said. She didn't care if she had any future. She had to go back to the national competition. Because only after the national competition, no one would say that it was just a dream. 10:45 p.m. Qin Group Building. Feng Yi kept raising his hand to look at the time on his watch. Why isn't she here yet? Obviously, he was a little anxious. Because they had to get to Lin City before 5 p.m. to participate in the regional registration. Otherwise, the neighborhood committee of the national competition would deem them as giving up automatically. Actually, the time didn't matter. But the reason why they didn't enter the top 4 last year. It was because of the day of the regional registration. When Almighty Qin appeared, there was still blood on his fingers. That was why Feng Yi had such a big reaction. Moreover, a girl didn't come this time. Feng Yi was even more worried. He stood there and paced back and forth. The other members were all on the commercial bus, including Qin Mo. But it was obvious that everyone in the team noticed that their captain seemed to be a little different today. But what exactly was different? They couldn't figure it out at the moment. The main reason was probably because Shui Yaoyao didn't appear, which distracted their attention. Especially Fu Jiu. She was still wearing a pure black anti-smog mask and looked out of the car window. When she saw Feng Yi raise his hand to look at his watch, she pulled her finger and jumped out of the car. She smiled and said lightly, "CEO Feng, you guys go first. I'll go find her. After that, I'll meet you in Lin City. She should be caught up with something. According to Yao Yao's personality, she won't be so unpunctual." Feng Yi thought about it. Let's wait for another 3 minutes. If she isn't here in 3 minutes, we need all the team members to be here. Otherwise, Qin Mo wouldn't have missed the best treatment time. Fu Jiu could hear the importance of this matter from Feng Yi's mouth. With one hand in her pocket, her eyes couldn't help but sink. Qin Mo, who was sitting in the car, looked at the youngster's side profile through the window. Qin Mo's expression didn't change at all, as if there was nothing in his eyes. But upon closer inspection, Qin Mo's eyes had never left the youngster since Fu Jiu got out of the car. That kind of deep and indifferent gaze and that kind of indifferent and noble sitting posture. Chapter 431. Just when Qin Mo was about to retract his attention, the youngster's eyes had a very obvious change. That kind of surprise couldn't be deceived. It was as if something like fireworks were blooming in his eyes. He was full of energy and was very handsome. He saw with his own eyes that the youngster took a step forward and held on to the person who came. Just like that, Shui Yaoyao's figure also came into view. Sorry, something happened on the way. Shui Yaoyao's hair was messy because when she walked forward, someone actually tried to hold her back. That auntie was really weird. She insisted on being reasonable, or she wouldn't let her go. Shui Yaoyao was in a hurry, so she was panting and didn't notice that there was a cut on her face. It looked like it was made by a fingernail. Fu Jiu had one hand in her pocket, and the other hand touched her face. Shui Yaoyao dodged in pain. Suddenly, Fu Jiu's eyes turned a little dark, and she gave people a much more dangerous feeling. But she didn't show it too much. Instead, she said faintly, "Get in the car first, we'll talk." Okay. Shui Yaoyao didn't think it was a big deal, as long as she made it in time. But she didn't know that in Qin Mo's eyes, this scene had slowed down a lot. Just like what he thought yesterday. He had always thought that he was the most special to the youngster. But now it seemed, he wasn't the only one who could affect the youngster's emotions. Something seemed to be pressing down on his chest, forcing him to close his eyes. Coco's feeling was the most obvious. Captain's low pressure seemed to be accompanied by cold air. And, had he regained his status as the Supreme Alliance's most beloved? Otherwise, why would the captain agree to let him sit next to him today? And not with Spade Z? Coco secretly looked at his captain's side profile. Some people were like this. It was clearly the same uniform. When he wore it, girls would say, "So cute, I want to take him home and raise him." When he wore it, he looked like a noble from a comic book. But the coldness was too strong. He wanted to swap seats with Spade Z. Spade Z wasn't afraid of the captain anyway. But when he thought of this, the best time had passed. The car started. Fu Jiu and Shui Yaoyao sat together. "The wound on your face? What happened?" Fu Jiu glanced at her phone, and her eyes darkened. Shui Yaoyao knew that the young man was concerned about her, so she smiled and shook her head. Ever since the internet incident, Shui Yaoyao understood that because of Spade Z's rapid rise to fame, the youngster was bound to be under extraordinary pressure. It wasn't that easy. She didn't want to trouble him with her matters. He wasn't being polite. Instead, she had to learn to handle her own affairs. In this way, she would be able to help His Highness Jiu. How could someone as smart as Fu Jiu not know what this silly girl was thinking? She said, "Okay." He raised his hand and poked her soft face with a smile. His face was gentle and his voice was pleasant. "Tell me when you want to say it." In fact, the conversation between the two of them wasn't loud at all. In fact, it was very soft. But in Qin Mo's ears, the sound seemed to have been amplified many times and there was even an echo. Chapter 432. Coco's body stiffened. He shouldn't mention anything about changing seats. Captain's gaze was as though he wanted to kill Spade Z. How did a certain someone provoke the captain? Coco tried his best to reduce his presence while looking back and forth. In the end, he didn't even dare to sleep, biting the rabbit's ear with his teeth. He felt like Captain was going to turn black. What should he do? In fact, Qin Mo didn't do anything. Compared to when he first met the youngster, he did whatever he wanted. Qin Mo's emotions now were completely different from before. He even had the urge to throw a tantrum. "Since I'm not special to you, then you're not that special in front of me, right?" But when he thought about it, he would remember the youngster's appearance in Tokyo because of him. That fierceness in protecting him was pleasing to the eye no matter how he looked at it. But why couldn't he be the most special one? Qin Mo didn't realize the situation he was in at all. This situation made him realize that not everything in this world could be planned out by him. Even if he closed his eyes, the image of the youngster rubbing the girl's head seemed to be swaying in front of him. That image was indeed dazzling. Fu Jiu was also looking at the Almighty. In fact, after yesterday's awkwardness, she had been looking for a chance to talk to the Almighty again. But as soon as they got in the car, the Almighty was already sitting next to Coco. Fu Jiu paused for a moment. She was smart enough to realize that now was not a good time to talk. Wait until they reached the hotel. With this thought in mind, after more than 3 hours of driving, they finally arrived at Lincheng. As the provincial capital, it was the registration point for the national competition. Many famous teams could be seen here. There were also reporters and media who were already stationed there. That kind of scene, with the esports competition banner and cosplay actors standing outside, made people feel hot. It was the first time Shui Yaoyao and Feng Shang came to this place. Besides being shocked, even their fingertips were a little numb. Was this the national competition? So this was what the national competition looked like. Games were always inseparable from online voice actors. When the deep and pleasant voice sounded, Shui Yaoyao and Feng Shang felt as if they were in the scene of Hero. It was very dreamy. That voice is... Feng Shang stuttered. All the lines spoken by his character in the game were recorded by this person. Feng Yi chuckled at the side. Don't joke around. That person is a god-level voice actor with a lot of fans. While they're still here, hurry and enter the venue. If anyone sees young Master Qin, I'll have to act as a temporary security guard. The Almighty's popularity was undoubtedly the highest among them. At this point, it had nothing to do with skill. It was all about looks. He was different from Feng Shang. Chapter 433. There was a special hall in the building to welcome every participating team. Hence, the people inside weren't as good as the people outside. When the Supreme Alliance members walked in, some people couldn't help but turn back. However, they weren't looking at Supreme Alliance. They were looking at Qin Mo's Supreme Alliance wasn't weak but compared to the Supreme Alliance team. Qin Mo, who had suppressed Xiangnan's captain, was the most interesting. The most valuable esports player. This was the title that almost everyone hoped to obtain. But Supreme Alliance wasn't the national champion team. But the title of the most valuable esports player landed on Qin Mo. In fact, even Feng Yi was shocked. Back then, when the news was announced, he had revealed a look of disbelief. How good was a player to be able to be the most valuable esports player? Was it just based on the number of kills? No. It wasn't just that. The most valuable esports player not only had good skills but also the ability to lead the team. Many people said that it could raise the team's ability to a higher level. That was something only Qin Mo could do. Hence, when he entered, many people were sizing him up and whispering among themselves. Did you see that? That's Qin Mo, the person with the most MVP awards. That was in the past, it might not be the case now. Last year, Supreme Alliance didn't even win the preliminaries. Ever since that time, Qin Mo rarely came out to do publicity. Recently, I've only heard of him playing in the wilderness. Could it be that his ability has declined? He doesn't dare to show his face? It's possible. It's also possible that his hand injury hasn't healed yet. But no matter what, it won't be that easy for him to win this year's MVP. Don't forget that there's a god in the regionals. Once they entered, they could smell the intense smell of gunpowder. This was a situation that could be encountered in other large-scale competitions besides the esports arena. As the Supreme Alliance took their seats, the atmosphere in the stadium seemed to heat up again. Even the shoutcaster paused when he saw Qin Mo very quickly. He resumed his deep voice. Teams that haven't confirmed their registration will be represented by their captains. Come here and fill out the form. Teams that have confirmed their registration, stay where you are. In such an occasion, order was important. However, there were more than 10 captains who went over to fill in the form. Every captain's aura was forcefully suppressed by Qin Mo. The commentator looked at the form in his hand and adjusted the microphone's position. Now, let's welcome the champions of last year's regional competition, which is also the top 4 in the country, the Yunzhong team, to read out the rules of the competition. Let's welcome them with a round of applause. That was the form. Fu Jiu sat in her seat. She felt like the school leaders were giving a speech, and the students were sitting down and listening. Playing with the phone in his hand, he was still thinking about how to talk to the god later. However, he didn't expect his elbow to be hit by someone. Moreover, from the strength of that blow, it was definitely intentional. Fu Jiu looked back and saw a team walking over. She had seen the leader of the team before. When she first bought a mouse, it was this person who stood up for Fu Shiming. Chapter 434. Fu Jiu ignored him and was very indifferent. It was probably because of this attitude that the opposing team members sneered. That person still had a lazy look on his face. After saying that, he continued to walk forward. The last member of the Yunzhong team was not someone else. It was Fu Shiming, who had a good relationship with the members of the Yunzhong team. When he passed by Fu Jiu, there was arrogance in his eyes, as if he was saying, "So what if you entered the Supreme Alliance?" The champion of the regional competition is not the Supreme Alliance, but the Lin Qing Yunzhong team. The reason why Fu Shiming appeared like this was to tell this bumpkin not to think that he was really different from before just because he had some skills and seized his uncle's shares. This was nothing. In the esports selection contest, the reason why he lost to this bumpkin was that his teammates were not good enough. Now it was different. Lin Qing Yunzhong, the top 4 in the country. Even the Supreme Alliance with young Master Qin might not be able to resist them. After all, young Master Qin's hand was injured. Coupled with the secret training during this period of time, they had developed a set of countermeasures for Spade Z's playing style. No matter how good Spade Z was, he was only good at killing people. Once it was a team competition, the 3 of them could surround him. This was Fu Shiming's idea. And the captain of the Yunzhong team, Ling Xiao, had a playful look on his face. He really didn't realize that the youngster who had some feelings for him before was really different from before. That gay from before would blush whenever he saw him. It was very obvious. The Ling family and the Fu family were business partners. At that time, he wanted to play with the other party. He didn't expect that person to be so smart. Whatever he asked him to do, that trash would do it. It was only fun to play with him for a day or two. He didn't like men, and he wouldn't touch that guy. He just simply enjoyed that kind of gaze. After a long time, he would also feel disgusted. Naturally, he looked down on Fu Jiu. But Ling Xiao was very interested in Spade Z from the beginning, and he even thought of ways to find this person to let him join the Yunzhong team. Since he knew that Fu Jiu was Spade Z, Ling Xiao found it interesting. It seemed that he had to pick up the old toy and play with it again. With this thought in mind, Ling Xiao led the 8 official members of the Yunzhong squad to the center of the auditorium. That was an honor only given to the regional champion. The members of the Yunzhong battle team weren't short either. After all, they were a battle team that purely aimed to make profits. Of course, they would pay more attention to this when it came to selecting members. Therefore, when they stood there was indeed a considerable effect. It seems like Yunzhong's momentum is also very strong this year. That's right. You didn't know last year, but we were almost beaten up by them. He wasn't there for the battle between Yunzhong and Supreme Alliance, right? It's probably useless. With his hands injured, he won't be able to defeat Ling Xiao. When the whispers started, the members of the Yunzhong battle team began to read the rules one by one. In order to record this scene, even the cameras were all aimed at the members of the Yunzhong battle team. The members of the Yunzhong team gave off the feeling that they were standing at the top. In fact, they really felt that they were at the top. Chapter 435. Once people stood in a high position, they would become arrogant. The Yunzhong team was the best example. After the registration, the organizing committee took the form and went to the top floor. All the major teams would return to the hotel to rest so that they could be in the best condition for tomorrow's competition. But when the Supreme Alliance stood up, they happened to come face to face with the Yunzhong team. They met on a narrow path. The atmosphere in the venue changed. The people from the other battle teams looked at this scene with different expressions. The surrounding noise suddenly quieted down. Everyone seemed to be looking at Lin Xiao and Qin Mo's side profile. Their eyes looked back and forth between the 2 captains, as if they were evaluating who was better. One path, 2 teams, and no one had the intention to give way. The difference was that the Yunzhong team's members had obvious pride on their faces. The Supreme Alliance's members were no different from usual. The reporter looked at the scene in the camera and couldn't help but say to himself, "So handsome. Indeed handsome." Let's not talk about whether the Supreme Alliance's skills were better than the Yunzhong team. Just from the looks alone, the Supreme Alliance was like a concentration camp for handsome men. Qin Mo and Fu Jiu didn't need to be mentioned. Both of them had the makings of an idol superstar. Their nobility was beyond the reach of ordinary people. Looking at Lin Feng and Yun Hu, the former was praised more than the girls in some teams. The latter came from a military compound, with a tall and strong body. Yin Wuiao had a cigarette in his mouth. His nose bridge was high, and he had the handsome face of a middle-aged uncle. Coco was holding a plush rabbit in his hands. Standing next to Feng Shang, who had the same temperament, he was so youthful that he could make a bunch of Andy fans scream. These people were all wearing the same uniform, led by Qin Mo. In terms of appearance, they had already surpassed the Yunzhong team. Or maybe it was because of this. The members of the Yunzhong team didn't like the Supreme Alliance. They were the champions of the regional competition, so why did Supreme Alliance receive more attention than them? This dissatisfaction became more and more obvious as the two teams brushed past each other. Especially when a tall man touched Lin Feng's shoulder, he sneered and spat out, "Loser." Qin Mo wasn't there that year. Yun Hu was the temporary captain. During the team competition, because of Lin Feng's loss, they didn't make it to the top 4 of the National League. This matter had always been a thorn in Lin Feng's heart. The person who spoke was the player who had killed Lin Feng back then. Lin Feng stopped in his tracks. The player and the teammate next to him laughed. Angry? Don't be angry yet. The competition hasn't started yet. You'll be even angrier tomorrow. That laughter was filled with obvious mockery. A clash between two teams full of gunpowder like this would definitely be a headline. Coupled with the current situation, there was no way the cameras would leave. Because all the members of the Supreme Alliance stopped in their tracks when they heard the laughter. The tall player from the Yunzhong team was still smiling at Lin Feng. Go back and practice some more. Don't let it end up like last time. You died before I could even unleash my full strength. There's no meaning in winning too quickly. Lin Feng didn't say anything. He knew that he was hot-tempered. He was afraid that if he said anything, he would pounce on him and scratch him to death. The contestant clearly understood his personality and was about to say something. Chapter 436. I'll return the same words to you. Practice your skills well, and don't get wiped out in the first round. Fu Jiu stuffed one hand into her pocket. Her words were always more natural than anyone else's. Who do you think will get wiped out? That person reached out his hand and wanted to grab Fu Jiu's collar. But the silver-haired youngster was one step ahead of him. He tilted his body, and his thin lips were still curved. That person didn't control his strength well, and he rushed into the seat next to him. The noise caused by such a big guy couldn't be ignored at all. In an instant, everyone turned to look at him. That person was very thin-skinned, and he felt that he had made a fool of himself. He wanted to turn around and teach the youngster a lesson. But when he turned around, he saw Qin Mo. They were of the same height. But the other party didn't do anything. He just looked at him like that. It was as if he had already defeated him. WNG Lei, enough. Ling Zhao's voice rang in his ears. As the captain of a team, he still had his imposing manner. He turned his eyes to Qin Mo. We'll get back at you in the game tomorrow. The tall guy listened to him, and he obeyed. He snorted coldly at Fu Jiu and walked back to the team. This was supposed to be the end of the matter. But for some reason, Ling Zhao suddenly stopped in front of Fu Jiu. His body leaned forward a little, and his face was almost touching Fu Jiu's face. I haven't seen you for a few days, and you seem to be different from before. Why? Is this your new way of attracting people? That voice was very low, and no one could hear it. It was almost a whisper. Just such a movement. Even the Supreme Alliance people couldn't help but turn around and look over. What was going on? Little Spade knew the other team's captain. Fu Jiu did know the man in front of her. Wasn't he the one she met when she bought the mouse? But why was this guy looking for presents? Not talking? Ling Xiao laughed, and his voice became louder. You weren't like this when you confessed to me. Confession. Confession? At that moment, everyone's expression was indescribable. Was there something wrong with their ears? Confession. The kind of confession that only a girl would make to a boy, or a boy to a girl. Lin Feng's mouth was so wide open that an egg could be stuffed inside. Shui Yaoyao, on the other hand, was a little worried. The incident on Weibo had just happened not long ago, and it was because His Highness Jiao might be gay that the public opinion became like that. Now that Ling Xiao had said this, they were at the venue of the regional competition. There were so many eyes watching. The slightest bit of carelessness would cause Highness Jiao to be destroyed. The camera was also pointed at her, waiting to see how Fu Jiao would answer. To be honest, Spade Z was too low-key. Apart from showing his face in front of the public during the selection contest, the rest of the time, he was only seen in the game. As the rookie king of Zone C, he was extremely popular. Some of the older pro players weren't even as hot of a topic as him. Thus, when Ling Xiao's confession came out, all the reporters' eyes lit up. This kind of explosive news would definitely be the headline apart from the start of the competition. Chapter 437. Unexpectedly, the young man just smiled and said casually, I've confessed to at least 10 people in school, so I have to ask, who are you? Who are you? Who are you? In the camera, Ling Xiao's smiling face froze. Feng Shang saw this and couldn't help but laugh out loud. WNG Lei, who was behind Ling Xiao, was instantly enraged. Are you pretending not to know our captain? Have you forgotten how you treated our captain? Fu Jiao's eyes swept over him indifferently, and she curled her lips into a smile. She sounded apologetic, but the words that came out of her mouth angered him to the core. Sorry, I usually don't have any impression of people who aren't that outstanding. You. WNG Lei didn't expect this person to be so shameless. She even pretended to have amnesia and denied what she had done. Fu Jiao didn't think she was shameless. She had confessed to so many people in the past. Did she have to remember them one by one? It wasn't a waste of brain cells. But, why did she confess to so many people? This Ling Xiao was one of them. If he hadn't mentioned it today, she would have forgotten about it. Or it could be said that this body didn't want to remember subconsciously. She didn't know what the other party had done to make this body want to forget and feel pain in its heart. But Z was Z after all. Since he didn't come with good intentions, she couldn't let him escape unscathed. Ling Xiao smiled again after the embarrassment. He lowered his eyes and said, You're much smarter now. You don't know me? Heh. Then let's see how you behave later. A gay pretending to be straight. After saying this, Ling Xiao was about to leave. But at this moment, Qin Mo opened his mouth. His handsome side profile didn't show any emotion, only coldness and nobility. If he is really a gay, how do you think he will behave with me around? Suddenly, Ling Xiao's face froze again. Because Qin Mo was so much better than Ling Xiao in all aspects. They weren't on the same level at all. Just as Qin Mo had said, any gay with eyes would definitely choose Qin Mo when placed in front of these two people. Qin Mo's type was really attractive to both men and women. Therefore, Ling Xiao's current behavior was indeed a little awkward. Mo Jiao and Mo Jiao were an official couple. Who would give up someone like Almighty Qin for someone else? No one was blind. But from what Almighty Qin said, it seemed like Spade Z wasn't interested in him, let alone others. Did that mean that Spade Z wasn't gay? All the information on the internet was defaming him, was that so? It had to be said that Qin Mo's words were powerful. Not only did it slap Ling Xiao in the face, but it also removed the long-lasting black mark on Spade Z. When the members of the other teams looked at the young man again, they did not look at him with such inquisitive gazes. The reporters naturally did not dare to write any more nonsense. Ling Xiao sneered and left the venue with the Yunzhong team. Before he left, he took another look at Fu Jiao. Those who knew Fujio well knew that the youngster had confessed to someone, which was why Qin Mo had turned to look at the youngster. How many more? Qin Mo's voice was faint. At first, Fujio didn't know that the Almighty was asking her. After she realized it, she said, "What?" Chapter 438. Fujio's back stiffened. She really didn't expect the Almighty to ask such a question. Didn't the Almighty care about the occasion when he asked this kind of question? Even though the people from the Yunzhong team and the reporters had left, there were only Supreme Alliance members around. But, how should she put it? She seemed to have taken a liking to anyone with a little bit of good looks. It was like this in her memory, It was obvious that Qin Mo wasn't going to let the youngster escape this question. He raised his eyebrows in a dignified manner. Fujio touched the bridge of her nose and said vaguely, "Not many." "How many are there if not a few?" Qin Mo glanced over. Fujio didn't say anything. Lin Feng loved this kind of commotion the most. He began to interrogate him. "You said there were at least 8 if not 10. Could it be 9? Fujio still didn't speak. Lin Feng laughed. "That can't be. You want more? A dozen?" Fujio gave him a look that meant for him to shut up. Lin Feng was shocked. "Don't tell me there are more than 20. With every increase in the number, Qin Mo's face grew colder. Fujio saw that there was no way out, so she simply admitted, "Who hasn't been young? Didn't you confess to someone?" This question was directed at Lin Feng. Lin Feng straightened his back and patted his chest. "How can that be the same? Brother always confesses to girls." "What about you, Ling Xiao? F***ck, how did you fall for him?" "How would I know?" This was Fujio's true reaction. She really didn't know why Fujio liked Ling Xiao. Lin Feng pointed at the young man and laughed. "You're shy. You're definitely shy. Fujio. Shy your ass. Didn't you see how dark the Almighty's face was? Can't you change the subject?" Lin Feng clearly didn't realize this. He rubbed his chin and said, "Do you think you'll go easy on me tomorrow?" "Don't worry, I won't. I'll kill him." In order to stop the Almighty from releasing any more cold air, Fujio even said some harsh words. Who would have thought that Lin Feng would act like an experienced person? He shook his head and let out a long sigh. This is hatred born from love. Big brother understands, big brother understands. "Fujio, someone come and take him away, will you?" Just like that, the topic of conversation never left Fujio. The members of Supreme Alliance were different from ordinary people. After all this happened, they didn't even care about why Fujio confessed to a boy. It was something else. Little Spade. We've been wanting to ask this for a long time. It's fine if you confess to others, but how did you have the guts to confess to Captain? After hearing this question, Fujio subconsciously glanced at the tall and straight figure walking in front of her. It was because of the awkward situation at the Fu family yesterday. And now, Fujio felt that she had to explain. "It's a misunderstanding." "Misunderstanding?" Lin Feng raised his eyebrows. "You're saying that you've never confessed to Captain?" Fujio glanced at the person in front of her again. "I did confess, but it was purely admiration." "Admiration, understand?" Lin Feng nodded in understanding. The others also revealed expressions of understanding. Chapter 439. All of a sudden, all the Supreme Alliance members froze in their tracks. Not only players like Lin Feng, but even Yin Wuyao, who had a cigarette in his mouth, was dumbfounded. Sleep. Sleep. Involuntarily, everyone's eyes turned to the other party in the next second. Fujio choked on the Almighty's question and started coughing. The Almighty added another stab slowly, including wanting to keep me, taking off my clothes, and looking at my abs. Are these all appreciation? Hearing that, everyone's gaze on Fu Jiu intensified. Uncle Yin Wuyao had an expression that said, "Little captain, I didn't know you were such a lustful person. I really couldn't tell from the outside." The other members' gazes were even deeper. The way they looked at her was like they were looking at a pervert. However, the Almighty, who threw down such a huge bomb, still continued to walk forward with his straight posture. In fact, this was not Qin Mo's usual style. It was just that there were more than 20 people who confessed to him. Qin Mo narrowed his eyes. If he didn't do something about this, who knew what would pop up in the future to distract a certain someone's attention? He originally thought that the youngster only did those things and said those things in front of him. Now that he thought about it, how many people had he said those things to? In the past, he didn't care what Fu Jiu was like. Even in the cafeteria, when the other party said that he liked him, wanted to keep him, and acted like he had money to spare, it had nothing to do with him. But now it was different. As long as Qin Mo thought about how the youngster had done similar things to others without his knowledge, he would feel very unhappy. He wasn't special. Was that what he meant? Fu Jiu didn't know what Qin Mo was thinking. After all, after the Almighty turned around, she had an intuition that she wouldn't be able to clear her name even if she jumped into the Yellow River. As expected, Lin Feng came over and patted her shoulder. Then, he shook his head and said, "It's really been hard on you. You've been facing Captain every day for the past few days. It must have been hard on you, right? I understand everything. I'm the same towards girls I like. Sigh, I like them but I don't dare to admit it. But you're braver than your brother, you still know how to confess to Captain. But there's one thing we've talked about before, Captain really doesn't like guys, so little Spade, you should just give up. How about this, in order to not let you suffer so much, you shouldn't be in the same room with Captain tonight. Men really don't have good endurance in this aspect. Say, if you take things too hard and do something to Captain, he'll beat you up." With that, Lin Feng turned towards Qin Mo and shouted, "Captain, little Spade will sleep with me tonight." When Qin Mo heard this, he paused for a moment. Two faint words floated over. Up to him. Was he hallucinating? Why did Lin Feng feel that the captain was even more unhappy than before? Moreover, he seemed to be in a fit of pique with someone. Lin Feng raised his head again and looked at Qin Mo's back. Yeah, he was still very handsome and indifferent. He must have thought too much. The carefree Lin Feng reached out and put his arm over Fu Jiu's shoulder. "Hurry up and thank Big Brother. It's not good for men to endure for too long. I'm saving you from a disaster. Captain isn't that easy to sleep with, and you. TSK, it's so uncomfortable." Fu Jiu glanced at him from the side and said leisurely, "You're right. It's not good for men to endure for too long. Aren't you afraid that I won't be able to sleep with Brother Mo and will settle for the next best thing and sleep with you?" Lin Feng suddenly paused. His voice had been muted. After a while, he said again, "Little Spade, tell me clearly, what do you mean by settling for the next best thing? I only want to see Brother Mo's abs when he's like that." "You?" Fu Jiu laughed. "Do you have abs?" A critical hit, an absolute critical hit. Everyone knew that Lin Feng was only pretty, but not handsome. Fu Jiu shook her head and continued, "But it's also safe for me to sleep with you. If you don't have any thoughts, there's no question of whether you can endure it or not, so be happy." Lin Feng. How could he be happy with such a reason? What did she mean by, "It's safe for me to sleep with you"? He was so unattractive. He had also been pursued by a man in the past. Wait a minute, this didn't seem to be something to be proud of. What the F***ck, how should he reply to show his manliness? Obviously, Fu Jiu wouldn't give him a chance to fight back. She left after saying that. Lin Feng pointed at the youngster's back and looked at Yunhu. Unfortunately, Yunhu didn't pay attention to him this time. Instead, he walked straight past him. "Hey, what's going on?" Lin Feng had never been treated like this before. Someone said, "Brother Lin, you've always slept with Brother Yun. Today, you suddenly said that you're going to sleep with Little Spade. This isn't very appropriate. Lin Feng opened his mouth and wanted to refute. But after thinking about it carefully, he realized that he and Yun who were schoolmates from the same school. Back then, when they entered the Supreme Alliance, they did sleep together whenever there was such an activity. He suddenly became speechless. But the words had already been said. How could he retract it? Fu Jiu also agreed. After all, she wasn't sure if the Almighty would discover her secret in this situation. If they could avoid sleeping together, they wouldn't sleep together. With the Almighty's current mood, if he found out that she was a girl, he definitely wouldn't feel good. Moreover, that person had already made it very clear that he didn't like being lied to. Hence, when they were assigned rooms that day, Lin Feng and Fu Jiu were assigned to a room. Although Yunhu and Qin Mo got into the same elevator, when they walked to the door, they looked at each other indifferently. In the end, Yunhu frowned and said in a low voice, I thought he was just saying it casually. Unexpectedly, that person really didn't want to sleep with him. This was indeed out of Yunhu's expectations. Qin Mo's side profile was still as handsome as before, but his eyes were a lot colder. Captain? Yunhu watched Qin Mo turn around and leave. He didn't know what he was going to do. Qin Mo's expression was very calm. You sleep here. Yunhu really wanted to ask what about him, but after thinking about it carefully, he and Captain sleeping in the same room. No matter how he thought about it, it didn't seem like a good match. Was this what people often said, that people with strong aggression would automatically repel each other? Yunhu lowered his eyes and looked at the room card in his hand. He had always been very clear about how he felt about that person. Ever since he was young, it had never changed. But now, he was a little confused. He wanted to be with Lin Feng because that was what he had always wanted. Why did Captain want to sleep in the same room as Little Spade? Yunhu looked up and glanced at the tall and straight back at the end of the corridor. It shouldn't be what he thought. After all, Captain was so straight. But was being straight useful sometimes? Chapter 440. The night came so quickly that before he could react, the thick fog had already risen outside the window. It's cold outside. Other than Feng Yi, the agent, who had come to Lin City to attend a social event. The rest of the Supreme Alliance members would be resting in the hotel for tomorrow's competition. Fu Jiu had been looking for the Almighty to resolve the awkwardness, but who knew that when she went to the room, only Yunhu was there. The moment Yunhu opened the door and saw Fu Jiu, he didn't mind. Looking for Captain? Yeah. Fu Jiu didn't deny it. Yunhu rubbed his hair. He isn't here, he got a room alone. He's probably the only one who knows the room number. That would be difficult to find. After all, the hotel was so big. Fu Jiu lowered her eyes and thought about it. She could hack into the hotel security system, but if she did that, the Almighty would notice something and she would have to explain herself. Forget it, I'll think about it after the competition tomorrow. With that thought in mind, Fu Jiu decided to leave. Unexpectedly, the moment she took a step, Yunhu spoke up. You can sleep in my room. When Fu Jiu heard that, she raised her eyebrows and looked at Yunhu with a meaningful gaze. Yunhu was very generous. He laughed. I don't want that guy to sleep with anyone other than me. Fu Jiu curled her lips. I understand, but he doesn't seem to understand your feelings for him. It's easier to act if you don't understand. After Yunhu finished speaking, he glanced at the youngster in front of him. When did you become gay? Fu Jiu really wanted to say that she wasn't gay. But Yunhu continued, I saw your confession previously. Fu Jiu didn't know what to do. She could only smile. You can think of it as one of my hobbies. Hobbies? After Yunhu packed his things, he looked at Fu Jiu with a deep gaze. If it's a hobby, it depends on who the other party is. Some people shouldn't confess so casually. But I really admire you for being able to express your feelings in front of so many people without fear, even if the other party is also a man. Fujiu. She really didn't want to accept this compliment. Who is the man you're talking about? She tried to recall that she had confessed to him. Yunhu frowned. I met Ling Xiao today. You seemed to like him a lot back then. Don't you remember? Fujiu chuckled. Yunhu paused. That's good. Fujiu raised her eyebrows. Looking at Yunhu, did she really have an affair with Ling Xiao? He's just toying with you. Everyone can see that. He just wants you to buy this and that. You have a lot of money anyway. Yunhu added another sentence. But it's weird, you seem different from before. At this point, Fujiu decided to stop. I went to the hospital once, and it was my head that was hit. After I recovered, I became clear-headed. What happened in the past was because I had a hole in my brain. Yunhu nodded, looking as if he was glad that he knew. Fujiu. He really didn't hide it at all. Oh right. Don't tell that guy, I don't want him to know that we're the same kind. The time isn't right yet. He isn't as tough as Captain and can handle any sudden situation. Lin Feng is different, he will definitely be scared off. Fujiu really wanted to say that she wasn't the same as him, but Yunhu didn't seem to believe her. After today's series of events. Chapter 441. However, after talking to Yunhu, Fujiu was even more certain of one thing. That was, she couldn't attack the Almighty under his nose anymore. The reason why she hadn't been exposed yet was that the Almighty hadn't noticed her before. Even Yunhu, who didn't like to talk and only had eyes for Lin Feng, noticed that she was different from before. The Almighty must have noticed it too. Fujiu's eyes paused. Sure enough, she couldn't use any means to check the Almighty's login information anymore. Sleep. Fujiu told herself so. The Almighty was probably angry at her for confessing to her opponent. Tomorrow, she would be able to prove her innocence after torturing that Ling Xiao. At least, she could tell everyone that she wasn't gay. They were both in the north, but the haze in Lin City wasn't any less than that in Jiang City. Qin Mo stood in the newly opened room and pulled open his collar. When he picked up the wine glass and looked down at the traffic, he realized for the first time that a room with floor-to-ceiling windows was so empty. It was so empty that he felt bored. Bored? He would never have felt this way before. But now, he felt that there was no point in doing anything. Perhaps it was because there wasn't a youngster beside him who needed to be taught a lesson. Qin Mo tilted his head and lit a cigarette. He held it between his fingers and didn't smoke it. Anyone who saw him now would feel that he was manly and domineering. But when he looked out of the window without moving his fingers, and his hair fell down, he gave off an indescribable sense of sexy loneliness. Qin Mo reached out and flicked the cigarette away. He walked to the side of the bed and inadvertently touched the mask in his trouser pocket. His gaze paused again. That mask wasn't special. It was very ordinary, pure black, without any patterns. But that touch still warmed the coldness in Qin Mo's eyes a little. That guy wasn't completely heartless. He looked lazy, but when he cared about someone, it made people feel comfortable. And when he was depressed, he would hang his head, and a few strands of his silver hair would stand up. That guy didn't even notice it. That guy. When Qin Mo found that the youngster's face kept appearing in his mind, his heart suddenly went numb. That feeling was very faint. It was so faint that when the phone rang, he quickly put it aside. The caller ID on the screen was very familiar. Qin Mo placed the phone to his ear. Hello. Son. The person on the other end of the phone seemed to be in a good mood. You have a competition tomorrow, right? How was it? Do you want me to go over and help you increase your popularity? Qin Mo turned and lay on the bed. There's no need. The indifferent words made the caller pause. According to his son's personality, he would definitely say, "Where is Mr. Qin? Tell him to watch over you and don't come out to provoke reporters." But today, he just calmly said that there was no need. The elegant movie queen paused for a moment and gestured for the people behind her to stop. Then, she lifted her long dress with one hand and walked to the makeup mirror. "Son, what's wrong with you today? Why is your voice so low?" "Nothing," Chin Mo replied and was about to hang up the phone. Chapter 442. When Chin Mo heard this, his fingers paused. In the end, he didn't say anything. He only replied with a faint voice, "He's not here." He swiped the screen and closed his eyes. He wasn't in a good mood because the other party didn't treat him as a special person. As soon as he thought of this, it was as if a hole had opened up in his chest. There was an indescribable bitterness. Chin Mo had never felt this way since he was young. It was probably because he had obtained too many things. Some things did not develop according to his expectations, which was why this happened. Chin Mo didn't know why. Perhaps he was used to it. He glanced at the WeChat on his phone. He recalled the expression on the young man's face when he didn't allow him to play with electronic devices. He was so depressed that he looked like a withered tiger. But now that she wasn't by his side, he felt that it was meaningless to look at WeChat like this. However, there was news from the higher-ups. They were all unimportant things. Chin Mo tilted his head. He couldn't fall asleep, as if he was looking for something. He opened the mobile app of Hero and logged in. There were a lot of people using WeChat to play Hero, and many of their avatars were lit up. Only Spade Z's avatar was gray. It seemed like a certain someone knew how to behave now. However, what was that fellow doing now? He shouldn't be sleeping so early. When she realized that she was thinking of the youngster again, she felt a chill run down her spine. Chin Mo's beautiful brows furrowed deeply. On the other side, the elegant movie queen looked at her phone that had been hung up. Her beautiful fingertips touched her lips. That action was very beautiful, especially when she tilted her head and talked to herself. "Oldly, why do I always feel that there is a little bit of resentment in my son's tone? Am I thinking too much? Don't worry about me. Madam, young master shouldn't blame anyone." Manager Lee, who stayed behind to take care of the movie queen on behalf of the boss, gave a flawless answer. The movie queen nodded. That was indeed the case. She knew very well that her son was still the same in front of her. However, what was with that moment of gloominess? The movie queen couldn't figure it out either. He simply made a decision. "I'll fly back to China tomorrow to cheer for my son." Manager Lee paused. "Madam, young master always speaks with his ability. You should know that if it's to cheer for him, it's better for you to stay in Milan. After all, you have a fashion show the day after tomorrow, and the boss has already booked a plane ticket here. If it's for other reasons, well, I just want to see who his pillow is." The elegant movie queen said frankly, "You don't know your young master's tone just now. It's obvious that he's unhappy because his bolster isn't around." "I know my son a little." Manager Lee didn't know what kind of pillow would make his young master unhappy. But according to Madam, that bolster was a human. "Alright, hurry up and book the plane tickets. Who knows, you might be able to see your young master compete tomorrow. I played 2 rounds of Hero a while ago, and I'll play another one later. There's a god carrying me." When Manager Lee heard this, he thought to himself, "Madam, young master is a god among gods. Who exactly did you find to carry you? Does the boss know about this?" Speaking up to this point, the movie queen seemed to have thought of something. She swiped her phone and showed him the screen. "Look, it's this person, Spade Z, but he doesn't let me add him as a friend. I heard he's also from our Chin group, so I can go meet him." Chapter 443. Manager Lee, who had been dealing with things outside all year round, only wanted to say, "Madam, does the boss know that you play this game? And to find a guru to guide you. Are you sure the boss will be happy?" But Manager Lee, who had always been professional, didn't say these things. He only called the boss and was in charge of informing the head of the family. After that, he went to book a plane ticket back to China. However, on this day, Fifth Avenue. A seemingly casual newsstand. A very old building. Around it were people coming and going, people attending the masquerade party. A man wearing a black feather mask, with a slender figure, turned sideways and walked towards the newsstand while the people were still celebrating. No one would have thought that there would be a secret door in this newsstand. After entering, it was a very quiet bar. The people in the bar didn't seem to want others to know their identity. The surrounding lights were also very dim, full of mystery. The man took off his mask, revealing his handsome Asian face. Fuck. Who else could it be other than Hoshino? He walked to the bar counter and knocked on the table. He shook the wine glass, and the bartender immediately pushed a document to him. This is the recent hacking incident, take a look. Hoshino opened the document and read from start to finish. There was no trace of Z's involvement in any of the incidents. The bartender didn't say much, only saying, the price remains the same as before. Hoshino heard this, signed a check and placed it on the bar counter. After the bartender kept it, he said thank you for your patronage. But Hoshino was not the same as when he came. His eyes clearly dimmed. Even though he put on his mask again, it couldn't hide the gloominess that emanated from his body. There was no news of Z. Not even a bit. Hearing such an answer, he didn't even know how he left the bar. How could Hoshino not understand? All the signs pointed to Z's possible absence. He had always been unwilling to admit it. How could he admit the fact that that person was gone? Hoshino lowered his eyes, as if something had been dug out of his heart. So much so that when others touched him, he didn't feel anything. Returning to the street, it was bustling with people again. Hoshino's attire was undoubtedly eye-catching, so it was normal for beautiful women to come over to talk to him. However, the beauty could also see that the man in front of her seemed to have lost all of his emotions. Whatever she said, he didn't seem to hear. That unspeakable sadness was so huge that it stunned the beauty who was approaching Hoshino. She couldn't help but remind him in English, "Hey, handsome, your phone keeps ringing. Are you sure it's not something serious?" Hoshino finally came back to his senses. He thanked him faintly and pressed the call button mechanically. It was a call from a teammate, and it was about the competition. As well as the recent developments in the esports circle. When he heard the other party talk about the public opinion on the internet for the past 2 days. Hoshino's hand that was about to hang up abruptly paused, his eyes radiating a dazzling light. You're saying that all the official verified accounts released the same message at the same time? Chapter 444. Posting the same message at the same time and the user didn't do anything about it. Hoshino was almost certain that this was a hacking incident. But how could such a thing happen in the esports industry? Where did this happen? Hoshino got straight to the point. Tokyo? That person shook his head. No, it's China. Recently, there has been a lot of activity there. You know, right? That Chinese MVP who once stood shoulder to shoulder with you seems to have recovered. Right now, he's leading his team in China's regional competition. Speaking of which, when are you coming back? We've scheduled a visit to China next month to watch their national competition. Don't tell me that you're not going to attend again. I will be attending. Hoshino smiled, his gaze sweeping over the cheering crowd. I'll go first, we'll meet up in China. What? Wait a minute, Xing. Before the person on the other end of the call, Hoshino hung up. He was still wearing the black feather mask that symbolized nobility, but his aura was much gentler than before. Even if it was just a similar feeling, he wanted to take a look. There weren't many hacking incidents in China. But what if it was Z? Wasn't it because of this faint hope that he could persevere until now? The night scene on Fifth Avenue was very different from Lin City. The European-style buildings and clean and retro streets didn't have fog. On the other hand, Lin City was covered in fog with the unique coldness of the north. It was time for a competition. No one fell asleep the moment they laid down. When they woke up the next day, even Lin Feng was telling himself. This time, he had to break into the National League. The reason why he loved gaming so much. Other than esports itself, there were also the people who accompanied him. Once they retired, they would no longer work hard for the same thing without any scruples. He couldn't leave any regrets. He didn't want the guy beside him to see him fail like last year. That wouldn't be handsome at all. Lin Feng lifted his thin lips. He hooked his bag with one hand and placed the other on Yunhu's shoulder, walking out of the hotel just like that. There was a reason why these two people were called a couple. They had grown up together. The Yun family had said many times that they wanted to send Yunhu overseas. This battle was really the last time they fought side by side. Therefore, he could only win and not lose. Fu Jiu was probably the most relaxed. The jade-like young man stood under the light, wearing his battle uniform. His thin lips seemed to emit a faint glow. This was the scene Qin Mo saw when he opened the door. No matter who saw the other party's refreshing appearance, their anger would dissipate a little. Qin Mo didn't ask how the youngster found his room. The two of them naturally walked together until the entire team gathered together. Sometimes, because one had been looking forward to it for too long and had worked hard for too long, when the day really came, one's emotions would not show. He wasn't in the mood to eat breakfast, but he fed himself until he was full. It was unknown whether everyone's heart was beating at the same frequency at this moment. They wore the same battle uniform, but it was a long battle line. The moment Qin Mo said, "Let's go," the hot-bloodedness seemed to be able to ignite a bright light from every member of the team. Chapter 445. They didn't know if enemies were bound to meet on a narrow road. The Supreme Alliance's first team was none other than the Yunzhong team. This was considered the Yunzhong team's home ground. After all, it was in Lin City. This match was different from the one in Tokyo. At that time, even if it was an international exchange, it was just a friendly match. But today, it was a real esports match. All the major online platforms in the country would be broadcasting it live. For example, Douyu, Battle Flag, and so on. Don't underestimate the influence of Hero. Many celebrities also like to play this game. Therefore, even if it was a small regional competition, it attracted a lot of media attention. Of course, the teams that came to the competition also knew about it. There was another reason why so many reporters came. It was because the Yunzhong team, one of the top 4 teams in the country, and the extremely popular Supreme Alliance were here. It was no wonder that the former didn't like the latter. Because some people always thought that the Supreme Alliance was just a little handsome. Why did they have more screen time than them? In the Yunzhong team, there were even some arrogant newbies who thought that the reason why Almighty Qin was bragged about so much was because of Feng Yi's publicity. If he was just an ordinary person like them, there wouldn't be so many people saying that he was the most valuable esports player in the past decade. As a provincial team and one of the top 4 teams in the country, the Yunzhong team was very strong both in terms of fans and backup. The competition was divided into 1v1, 2v2, and 5v5. Each team member could only participate in one of them. When it came to the second match, there would be a change of players. This was the competition system. 1v1 would compete first, and the second would follow. After the commentators were in place, the online live broadcast officially began. As everyone can see, the players of the two teams are in place. The entire competition will last less than 2 hours. Fans and otakus will have some benefits to watch. Oh right, old Jiang, you've been in the esports circle for some time now. I wonder which team you're more optimistic about this time. There were usually 2 commentators in an esports competition to hype up the atmosphere. Of course it's Yunzhong. The shoutcaster straightened his earpiece and said in a clear and logical manner, "You and I both know Qin Mo's maneuvering. He is definitely at the level of the Almighty and no one is his match in a one-on-one battle. But you can't deny that he has been resting for the past year. For an esports player, if they don't practice often, their hand speed will decline. Qin Mo is no longer at his peak. Besides, even with an almighty like Qin Mo, he can only participate in one match. What about the other two? The scale of the Yunzhong team wasn't just one level higher than last year. Moreover, the Supreme Alliance lost to the Yunzhong team last year, which was why they didn't enter the national qualifier. Therefore, I would definitely stand on the Yunzhong team's side. Of course, this was all my personal opinion. Fans of the Supreme Alliance, please don't criticize me. It was obvious that the commentator was looking at the game with a biased eye. After he said that, the atmosphere couldn't help but become a little awkward. However, what the live streaming platform cared about was not these, but the number of viewers and topics. That was why they had hired this commentator. Chapter 446. The other commentator didn't know how to respond to the conversation. After all, he didn't have any opinion on any team, so he could only change the topic. The Supreme Alliance is here. Indeed, every one of them is handsome. But esports isn't about who is handsome. The shoutcaster called Old Jiang always had a disdainful smile on his face. Even the people sitting next to him could tell, let alone the Supreme Alliance's side. Fujiu sat on the rightmost seat. With a lollipop in her mouth, she tilted her head and looked at the shoutcaster team. She didn't know why, but there was a hint of a smile on her face. Her smile was incredible. So many fangirls were going crazy. Spade. Ah. My big spade. Don't underestimate the lungs of the girls. Their shouts could almost flip the entire arena. Old Jiang, look at the atmosphere. It's not just handsome. My opinion is to look at the competition. The performance of some girls who don't play hero can't be used as a reference. Old Jiang, don't you know this Spade Z? He is the rookie king of Zone C, the winner of 99 first kills. Old Jiang, why do you only look at the surface like the young people? No matter how good he is still an amateur. He hasn't gone through professional training, so everything is unknown. According to what you said, Supreme Alliance has no chance of winning? I've said from the beginning that I'm optimistic about the Yunzhong team. If I were to predict, this match is likely to be 2-1. Supreme Alliance is likely to win the first 1v1. After all, they have Qin Mo. Are you saying that Supreme Alliance will send Qin Mo for the 1v1? What else? If it's a 1v1, Supreme Alliance might win one. When it comes to the team competition, Qin Mo, Yunhu, and even with Lin Feng, Supreme Alliance's overall fighting power is still inferior to the Yunzhong team. Since one person can only participate in one match, Qin Mo is the most suitable one. Old Jiang, did you forget that Supreme Alliance recruited the almighty north of En Mountain this year? He used to be an almighty, Old Jiang. En Mountain isn't young anymore. He does have experience, but we don't know if he has weakened over the years. Wait a minute. The lineup for the 1v1 is out. There's no need to be so anxious. It must be Qin. Before the commentator named Old Jiang could finish his sentence, he was choked by the game ID that appeared on the big screen. Spade Z versus Ling Xiao. Supreme Alliance didn't send Qin Mo, but Fujiu. To think that Old Jiang was still patting his chest and talking about his speculation. But this time, his entire body stiffened. This slap to the face was really awkward. The commentator with the surname Zhang, who was sitting next to him, saw his expression and couldn't help but laugh out loud. It seems that Old Jiang is wrong this time. Chapter 447. The shoutcaster's voice was transmitted through the microphone. This meant that before she put on her headphones, she could hear the shoutcaster's words. She tilted her head in that direction again. Her silver hair fell down, revealing a devilish handsomeness, like a vampire's smile before sucking blood. Dangerous and unpredictable. But someone else said, this Spade Z isn't that great, is he just going to let the shoutcaster talk? Even though I think Spade Z is good, everyone has seen Ling Zhao's maneuvering. It's hard to say who will win this match. Even Spade's fans felt their hearts skip a beat when they saw the battle list. If Big Spade had met someone else, they wouldn't have been so worried. It was the first match of the National League. And it was a 1v1. Why did Supreme Alliance send Big Spade to fight Ling Zhao? After all, the opponent was really strong. Why did the wise and mighty Lord Feng Yi make such a decision? Uncontrollably, the fans turned to look at Feng Yi. In fact, it wasn't just the fans, even the Supreme Alliance members were looking at Feng Yi. Feng Yi pointed, directing them to the Almighty sitting at the player's seat. When everyone saw it was Qin Mo, the lethality of their gazes weakened. Which meant that Almighty Qin had sent Big Spade. Almighty Qin had chosen this battle order. Why? Lin Feng wanted to ask this question too. Captain, it isn't good to let Little Spade fight Ling Zhao alone. After all, this is his first time playing a professional game. What if he really lost? Qin Mo was still indifferent and dignified. His tall and straight back was draped with his uniform jacket. His gaze swept over Lin Feng. What's wrong with that? It's just the right way to deal with someone who thinks he's the best after a confession. Why did the Almighty's words sound like he was asking his current girlfriend to slap the person who had feelings for her in the face? It had to be said. The Almighty's method was too profound. Other than Yun, whose finger pausing for a moment, the slow Lin Feng didn't understand at all. Captain, are you testing Little Spade's loyalty to Supreme Alliance? Don't worry, he knows what's important. An ex-boyfriend is nothing. Ex-boyfriend? Qin Mo's voice was calm as he raised his eyebrows in Lin Feng's direction. Yun Hu pulled Lin Feng back and stuffed him with half a cup of water. Drink more water and talk less. No, I'm afraid that if I drink too much, I'll want to boo during the match. Then hold it and pretend to drink. With Yun Hu's control, Lin Feng wouldn't be hurt by the cold air emitted by Qin Mo's ex-boyfriend. It was inexplicably unpleasant to the ears. On the other hand, the members of the Yun Zhong team smiled when they heard the name list. Even when Fu Jiu walked over to the computer, they were still shouting. Are you sure you did that to my captain? Pfft, he might take the opportunity to throw the match. Even if he didn't throw the match, do you think this person can beat Captain? It's ridiculous to have a gay out. Chapter 448. In the face of such provocation, Fu Jiu didn't even look at him. She sat directly in front of the computer, moved her fingers, and put on her headphones. Then, she opened a typing window and tested the sensitivity of the keyboard. Seeing this, Ling Zhao also looked down. The youth now was indeed different from the one he knew in the past. If he had been like this before, he might have been more or less interested. But until now, he wasn't sure if this was a new trick of loosening the reins only to grasp better. Whether it was or not. He really wanted to trample this person under his feet now. And Qin Mo. Was he looking down on him? Sending a newcomer to 1v1 with him? Then he would show him the strength of the national top 4. Booting up and logging in. Whether it was Fu Jiu or Ling Zhao, they were very fast when doing this. The profile of their faces with the black headphones revealed a sense of coolness. But Fu Jiu was the only one who was playing games and eating a lollipop at the same time. While the players are choosing their characters, let's analyze why Supreme Alliance sent Spade Z out. Just now, Old Jiang said that Supreme Alliance played a bad hand. I just thought of a possibility. Could it be that Qin Mo's hand hasn't recovered and isn't suitable for a 21v1? That's why he sent Spade Z out. The commentator surnamed Zhang is still relatively neutral. Old Jiang laughed. Then Supreme Alliance is in trouble. If Qin Mo's hand hasn't recovered yet, I'm afraid they can't even win one game. This is really the home court of the Yunzhong. Okay, enough talk. Let's watch the game. The two players are ready, and the national regional competition officially begins. As the commentator's voice fell, Fu Jiu and Ling Xiao entered the hero page at the same time. According to the esports competition rules, the opponent's Crystal City had to be conquered before 3 deaths. Once someone was killed 3 times, the game would automatically end, and whoever died would be the loser. The fans began to worry again. Because the game character chosen by Ling Xiao had a much higher attack power than Big Spade to a certain extent. Ling Xiao also laughed at this moment. He stared at the screen as if he was a different person. His left hand was on the keyboard, and his right hand was moving the mouse. He bypassed the defense tower in the middle lane and directly chased in Fu Jiu's direction. A series of critical hits were about to land. If the person standing in front wasn't Fu Jiu, but someone else, they would definitely be trapped there and killed instantly. But because it was Fu Jiu, the situation of being insta-killed did not happen. As the silver light fell, she operated the mouse and suddenly jumped to the left. With a beautiful maneuver, she directly crossed the grass and avoided most of the shots. Even so, she had lost a third of her HP. This battle situation was directly synchronized on the big screen. The members of the Yunzhong team were delighted. It's useless, don't think you can escape Captain's pursuit just because you dodged that. Spade Z is dead for sure this time. The FC King is just a title that can be used in front of ordinary gamers. Now that he's here, let him know that with us around, he isn't fit to be called king. On the screen, Spade Z was still moving, but this time, she wasn't killing anyone on sight like before. Instead, she was attacking the defense tower. Chapter 449. His HP dropped as soon as the game started. This had never happened to Spade Z before. Did this mean that Spade Z was really going to lose? The fans felt their hearts wrench. But at this moment, the shoutcaster added, "I'm afraid Spade Z is doomed this time." Is there any suspense? Old Jiang chuckled. Right now, it's like he's being chased by Ling Xiao. He doesn't dare to get close to Ling Xiao at all. It's already a miracle that he didn't die. I think Spade Z's standard is basically at this level. I can only say that the professional league isn't suitable for a FC king like him. Old Jiang was obviously looking down on Spade Z's skills by saying that. Lin Feng turned towards Qin Mo once more. Qin Mo lifted his lids and glanced at him. You have to believe in your teammates on the battlefield. Besides, Fu Jiu is competing now. Do you think he will lose? This was a very calm rhetorical question. However, it carried a very strong sense of oppression. In other words, that person would never lose. Lin Feng paused. Captain had never given such an evaluation to anyone before. Little Spade was the first. Just as this thought appeared in his mind, a voice suddenly rang out. A line of words popped up on the screen. Fu Jiu conquered the opponent's defense tower. Ling Xiao's speed was also very fast. He quickly skimmed behind Fu Jiu. It was probably to catch Fu Jiu off guard. It had to be said that his strategy was very good. On the screen, Fu Jiu's HP dropped by half again. However, she was still not immobilized. It was still an extremely fast movement. Ling Xiao chased after him. When they reached a certain place, they realized that Spade Z had already returned to the city. What a pity. The commentator, Old Jiang, couldn't help but say, Spade Z's HP was almost gone. It seems like luck is important in this game, but no one can guarantee that their luck will be so good all the way. Spade Z still has to fight. I hope he doesn't act like a deserter and only knows how to hide. Otherwise, this game will be too boring. Some of the audience agreed with Old Jiang's words. They were here to watch the match. The so-called competition was a slaughter. In such a large-scale regional competition, there were countless almighties. People would only watch if the killing was spectacular. What's the point of hiding like this? However, even so many people didn't think Fujio would win. Fujio didn't show any change in her emotions. She still had that lollipop in her mouth. He rushed to the bottom lane again. He first fought the monsters in the wilderness, then went straight to the enemy's second defense tower. This time, Ling Xiao didn't attack Spade Z from behind, in case he escaped again. Instead, it was a direct confrontation. However, if he wanted to face him head-on, he would have to ask the youth if he wanted to face him head-on. Fujio moved her fingers and dodged another critical hit. Ling Xiao's eyes narrowed. Of course, he had to give chase. Fujio walked through the grass, and her speed was indeed fast. No one noticed that at this moment, Yunzhong's defense tower, which was already half destroyed, was being attacked by the soldiers. Everyone's attention was on Gan Ling Xiao to see if he could kill Fujio in one hit. Even the commentator sat up straight and couldn't help but say, there should be no problem this time. However, returning to the city again, Fujio returned to the protection range. With the defense tower still around, Ling Xiao would not easily enter the city. After all, it was common sense that entering the city meant certain death. Chapter 450. The FC King of Zone C is like this? He didn't get this by fighting, he got this by hiding. I really don't understand how someone like this can participate in the professional league. Discussions were going on all over the field, but the Supreme Alliance members didn't know what was going on. They didn't feel anything. Spade Z was even better at doing things his own way. For the third time, he was fighting monsters in the wild, heading towards the top lane. At this moment, people heard the second noise. That was another defense tower in Yunzhong fell? Ordinary people couldn't understand what was going on. But anyone who had been in contact with Fujio knew that this guy had a dark heart. To put it bluntly, Hero was a siege game. That guy couldn't be planning to. Lin Feng lifted his head abruptly, glancing at the screen where the character dashed through the bushes. He lowered his voice because of a certain speculation. Do you think it's a coincidence that Little Spade has been fighting monsters in the wild? Yunhu glanced at him. What do you think? I feel like he has a premeditated. Lin Feng didn't finish the word, premeditated. On the screen, Ling Xiao jumped out of the grass. It was a beautiful move, and a little carelessness would lead to a critical hit. Spade Z lost HP again. The shoutcaster immediately said, nothing can happen more than 3 times. This time, Spade Z can't escape. The people in Yunzhong stood up and shouted, Captain, chase him. This time, don't let him escape. However, just when people thought that Spade Z was going back to the city with that jump, the game character suddenly stopped and pulled back his fingers. As the sword's shadow rotated, Ling Xiao was caught off guard, and he lost 2 drops of HP. No one expected Spade Z to fight back at this moment. The shoutcaster's mouth froze. But in a game, people didn't have that much time to make expressions. After Ling Xiao was pierced, his speed also decreased. At this time, he couldn't win in a one-on-one fight because he didn't have any big moves left. After the shock, Ling Xiao didn't hesitate. He ran to the left and retreated to the defense tower. What a false alarm. The shoutcaster didn't finish his sentence. A figure suddenly appeared behind Ling Xiao. Spade Z's ID was still there. It was just that his movements were too fast. Before anyone could react, he had already rushed over, leaped up, and used a critical strike. Ling Xiao didn't even have the slightest bit of preparation before receiving such a blow. When people saw this scene, they couldn't believe their eyes. But Spade Z's ID was still there. When he landed, his black battle robe glowed with a silver light. This was under the tower. If he killed someone, he wouldn't be able to live. But was that really the case? All the cameras in the venue were pointed at the silver-haired young man sitting in front of the computer. His face was so handsome that it seemed a little unreal. What was even more cool was the youngster's positioning and mechanics. The crisp sound of the keyboard was like rhythmic music. And the youngster's slender fingers were really fast on the keyboard. Before the cameras could lock onto that movement. On the screen, Spade Z's ID flashed and jumped out of Defense City's attack range. It was still shining with silver light. The reflection was in everyone's eyes, and even their eyes were swaying. Following Ling Xiao's fall, they heard the game's special effects sound. Chapter 451. First kill. And it was an undeniable first kill. In an instant, everyone felt like they were going crazy. F***CK, 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 my health bar is going to be empty because of Big Spade's handsomeness. He raised his long sword and crossed the tower to kill. Who else could it be other than me, Big Spade? Wait a minute, I can't waver. I'm here for Almighty Qin, not for Big Spade. I can't be a fan just like this. But this scene was too shocking. From fingers to hair, they felt numb. The Yunzhong team's members were stunned. Their mouths were wide open, and they couldn't close them. The roar of support was so loud that it almost tore the roof off. Everyone was shouting, "First kill! First kill!" The commentator, who had just predicted that Spade Z wouldn't survive this match, was as embarrassed as he could be. Commentator Zhang laughed at the side. Old Jiang, the situation is far from what you said. Old Jiang didn't say anything, because he realized that no matter what he said, it didn't seem right. When it came to shock, no one felt it more than Ling Xiao himself. He just sat there, looking at his black screen, and he couldn't believe that he had died just like that. And he was killed by the toy he looked down on the most? But it was obvious that Fujio didn't want to give the opponent any chance to react. She used the time difference of Ling Xiao's death to control the game character to attack the opponent's third defense tower with one hand, and with the other hand on the keyboard, she said a few words. I not only know how to dodge, but I also know how to kill. This was a reply to the Yunzhong team, and it was also a slap to the commentator's face. There was no euphemism. To be honest, old Zhang's face was really colorful, and it made people want to laugh. But the fans' attention wasn't completely focused on this, because in that short period of time, the Yunzhong team's third defense tower also fell. Only then did Ling Xiao realize that he had been wrong from the beginning. The opponent wasn't dodging at all. Instead, everything was aimed at pushing down the tower. At that moment, Ling Xiao's face turned very ugly. He thought that he had only died once. He wanted to save the situation, but he realized that he couldn't. Not only that. At this moment, Spade Z's playing style was completely different from before. Spade Z had been hiding all this time. Right now, the youth was like an ice-plated sword, carrying a kind of light that could sweep away 1,000 armies. At that moment, everyone realized that this was a true head-on confrontation. Spade Z. The Spade Z that everyone knew. He was back. He no longer needed to worry about anything else. He only needed to kill. In front of the camera, the youngster was moving the mouse. As the silver hair fell, the familiar sound effect once again rang out in the esports arena. Ling Xiao's body fell heavily onto the ground. There was no longer any obstruction. Fujio leaped over and didn't give Ling Xiao a chance to revive for the third time. She directly attacked the enemy's city. Complete victory. When these two words were displayed on the screen, they emitted a unique golden light. This time, it wasn't just the shoutcaster, even Lin Feng was dumbfounded. W1? Wasn't this too fast? No one knew why, but at that moment, there was a deathly silence. Everyone froze as if a spell had been cast on them. And the youngster, who had done all this, just tilted his head, took off his headphones, and walked towards Qin Mo. With a serious expression, he only said one sentence, "This person, I really just casually confessed." Chapter 452. Now was not the time to talk about this. Lin Feng really wanted to see what was in little Spade's head. Fu Jiu didn't care what other people thought of her. She was trying to get rid of the awkwardness between her and the Almighty. Qin Mo listened to the youngster's words and leaned back in his chair. His long legs crossed casually. When he looked at Fu Jiu, his thin lips curled up, and there was a smile in his eyes that looked like the first melting of ice and snow. This smile didn't matter. It was captured by the camera and put on the big screen, and it was a stunning beauty. Fu Jiu felt that this Almighty should really be kept at home. Otherwise, if he was allowed to smile freely, many people would be drunk to death. Unfortunately, she didn't have enough money right now. Even if she had enough money, she still had to think about a lot of things. For example, would the Almighty be willing to let her raise him? Qin Mo looked at the youngster, and the corner of his mouth curled up carelessly. I know. As soon as he said those 3 words, he reached out and rubbed the youngster's fluffy head. His side profile was indescribably handsome. Well played. She was praised again. Fu Jiu was very happy. The most happy thing was that the awkwardness was gone. This scene was very eye-catching at the scene. Especially in the eyes of the CP fans, it was no different from giving out candy. Let me calm down first. When did the Almighty ever look at someone with such a gentle gaze? What's going on? He turned into a protective demon when facing Spade Z. I just want to say that these 2 people are in the same frame again. They are so handsome. Giving out candy as if no one else is around. I only admire the Almighty. Those 2 people were indeed so handsome that it was hard to ignore them. Even if Qin Mo was just sitting there, the youngster standing in front of him was an indescribable picture. If one had to describe it, there was only one word: pleasing to the eye. It was because there was too much attention on this side. Therefore, no one noticed that there was an additional beauty in the audience. That beauty was wearing a branded coat, and her face was covered by the collar. But from the curve of her chin, it wasn't hard to see that it was a very beautiful face. But now the beauty was so shocked that she had to lower her voice and ask Manager Li, who was behind her, "Is that still my son, your young master?" Manager Li, it was no wonder that Madam would ask such a question. Young master had never been so intimate with anyone before. It was hard to imagine that one day, the man who was always calm and indifferent would touch someone else's head. This, indeed, didn't seem like it. So that kid is Spade Z, like a fangirl. The beauty smiled and said, "He's really handsome. He doesn't lose to my son at all. As expected of the god who brought me up." Manager Li coughed lightly. "Madam, I think about your request to meet Spade Z. Looks like he's leaving." Before Manager Li could finish, the beautiful woman interrupted him with an elegant voice. "Strange, the competition isn't over yet. Where is that kid going?" Manager Li looked up and almost met young master's gaze. He immediately lowered his eyes. However, he had a guilty conscience. Young master usually just casually glanced at him. He probably went to the toilet, Manager Li said implicitly. The beauty smiled. "Is that so?" In other words, the chance for a chance encounter has come. Chapter 453. Fu Jiu didn't know that she was being watched. She only looked at the Yunzhong team with the corner of her eyes. Then it was the 2v2. The Yunzhong team's members all held back their anger. "Captain, don't worry, we will definitely get back your face." This was said by the team member who looked down on Lin Feng before. Lin Feng and north of Yin Mountain, one of them is old, and the other was defeated by me. I will win back all the blows Yunzhong team suffered just now. Lin Zhao's eyes darkened, and he calmed himself down. He didn't forget that he was also the captain of the Yunzhong team. He said in a low voice, "Pay attention to their movements, don't let them steal the turret. When 2 people are fighting, pay attention to the bushes." That person nodded and looked at his teammate again. The 2 of them went to the battlefield together, and when they met Lin Feng, they were obviously disdainful. After the commentator with the surname Jiang saw this, he seemed to regain some of his aura and immediately said, Yunzhong underestimated his opponent in the first match, otherwise Spade Z wouldn't have won so quickly. I hope Yunzhong can be serious in the second match. This sentence seemed to be criticizing the Yunzhong team's carelessness, but in fact, it was nothing more than saying that Spade Z was lucky to win this time. He said that after being slapped in the face. Spade Z's fans really wanted to laugh at this commentator's face. However, Lin Feng really didn't expect that his partner would be north of Yin Mountain. After all, he wasn't fighting alone, he was always with Yunhu. They had never been separated. Thinking of this, he turned back to look at the guy who had been with him since he wore diapers, and he felt inexplicably uncomfortable. After Yunhu saw that look, he paused for a moment and then walked over. Lin Feng raised his eyebrows and wanted to ask what he was doing. But he saw that person look down. He was wearing a black wristband on his left hand, and his voice was low and deep, accompanied by the peace of time. Protect your opponent and win well. Yunhu's words were like his personality, always concise and to the point. Lin Feng understood the comfort in his words, and he curled his lips into a smile. Don't worry, I will definitely get you an MVP, so I will have more trophies than you. Yunhu watched the smile on this fellow's face. He really wanted to tell him that he could give him the trophies if he wanted. However, in order to prevent this person from being too arrogant, he just let him sit in front of the computer and didn't say anything more. But this was the scene. It still made people feel the beauty of accompanying each other since they were young. That was why there was a saying in the esports circle. Only when he saw the two of them would he believe that they were childhood friends. It had nothing to do with love. Instead, it was our common perseverance along the way. Lin Feng lifted his eyes and glanced at Supreme Alliance's preparation area. No one could accompany someone for a lifetime. If possible. At the very least, he gave Yundahu a youth without regrets. Last year, it was because of him that they didn't enter the national qualifier. This year, he had to win. In fact, seeing this, Fu Jiu was no longer worried, so she stood up. Where to? As soon as the youngster moved, Almighty Qin's face turned towards him. Fu Jiu lowered her voice. By some, I'm thirsty. Little Spade, aren't you going to continue watching? There's nothing to see. Because Lin Feng will win. Chapter 454. Fu Jiu was so sure that she wouldn't lose this match. Without even looking, she put one hand in her pocket and walked to the side exit. Her teammates were still looking at the youngsters back in a daze. Then, they turned their eyes back to the screen where the match was going on. For some reason, when Little Spade was talking, he thought of his captain's words, trust your teammates on the battlefield. These two people seemed to be surprisingly similar in some ways. Fu Jiu didn't think too much about it. She was really thirsty. She walked to the vending machine and felt in her pocket. She didn't have enough coins, so she only had one lollipop left. She opened it with narrowed eyes and held it in her mouth. What would it feel like to be so poor that you couldn't even afford a cold bottle? However, Fu Jiu had her own ways to deal with this vending machine. She just put one hand in her pocket, bent her waist slightly, and moved her fingers under the vending machine. There was a smacking sound. Coke was selected, and a bottle jumped out automatically. Fu Jiu picked it up with a smile. Just as she was about to open it, she heard a very pleasant female voice behind her. So you can buy things like this. Fu Jiu's fingers paused. She didn't feel embarrassed at all for being caught. She turned around and smiled. I can't help it. I'm too poor. Manager Li. Did you forget that you used 100 yuan to buy a fried skewer? Young Master Fu. It had to be said that Fu Jiu was too rowdy, and many people had seen her behavior as a nouveau riche. Manager Li was one of them. When he saw this kid throwing money around, he felt that this kid couldn't speak. Compared to others' contempt for Fu Jiu, he felt more pity. If a person only relied on throwing money around to get a sense of existence, did this kid really need someone to care about him? But, looking at the youngster who said that he was poor, he didn't look like he needed anyone's care at all. Instead, he was handsome from the inside out. Manager Lee thought that it was no wonder that young master became good friends with him. If this was the old young master Fu, young master probably wouldn't have liked him. Fu Jiu was a smart person. She could tell that these two people were either rich or respectable, especially the madam who had just asked her. Elegant, beautiful, and most importantly, she looked good when she smiled. She gave people a comfortable sense of beauty. And she was the kind of person who would look fashionable no matter what she wore. He was an outstanding person. It was said that the eyes were the worst at lying. Fu Jiu also believed this. But why did this beauty keep staring at her and drinking Coke? It couldn't be because she was too handsome, right? Fu Jiu stopped and looked over with her black and white eyes. The movie queen smiled with charming dimples on both sides of her thin lips. Ah, did you notice that I was looking at you? Fu Jiu. Madam, because it's too obvious, I really can't choose to ignore it. The movie queen smiled even more beautifully. Child, I didn't expect you to be even more handsome up close. I'm your fan, can we take a picture together? Fans? No way, she had always thought that her fans were all young. Fu Jiu turned her arm sideways, wiped her lips with her sleeve, and coughed lightly. Her first reaction was, Madam, I'm sorry, did you get the wrong person? Chapter 455. Fu Jiu paused. Was he really her fan? Spade fan? The movie queen probably noticed the young man's raised eyebrows, so she took out her phone. Look, I'm playing hero too. You carried me in the game and I became a fan. But when I add you, you always fail. It makes me sad. Is it because I'm too bad that you don't add me? The movie queen's acting skills were top-notch. At the end of her speech, her beautiful eyes were filled with tears, and even Fu Jiu couldn't bear to look at her. Well, I'm just not used to adding other people as friends. This was the first time Fu Jiu was explaining this to someone, so she stuttered. Sigh, so embarrassing. The movie queen was still resentful. Then let's take a photo together. Between playing games and taking a picture, Fu Jiu chose the former. I'll play games with you again. She was really not used to taking pictures with other people, except with the Almighty. Do you want to play now? The movie queen looked very excited. Manager Lee coughed loudly behind her. He wanted to remind Madam why they were looking for the young man. It was all for young master. But it was obvious that the movie queen had long forgotten about it. As a hero player who had just entered the Dao, it was a very happy thing to be able to fight with Spade Z again. The movie queen was about to agree. Manager Lee had no choice but to say, Madam, this gentleman should still be in the middle of the competition. It's not good for you to play games with him now, right? Aren't people competing in the 2v2? The movie queen didn't understand this, so she politely asked for the youngster's opinion. You don't have to go back and watch, right? Fu Jiu took out her phone and smiled. No need. With Captain here, we will win. Captain? She finally mentioned her son. The corners of the movie queen's mouth curled up slightly. You seem to trust your captain a lot. Fu Jiu threw away the empty can of Coke and looked back with a smile. Almighty Qin is very powerful, and he is also very gentle. The movie queen really couldn't see how her son was gentle. However, which mother didn't like others to praise her son? She couldn't help but have a better impression of the young man in front of her. Let's sit there, it'll be more convenient for us to play games. Fu Jiu pointed at the resting area. The movie queen immediately agreed. Okay. When she logged into the game, the smile on her lips never stopped. Manager Lee. Madam, please wake up. You said you were here to test young master's friend. You really didn't come here to play games with him. But it was obvious that the movie queen's focus was no longer on that. She stared at her phone screen very seriously. Her elegance was still there, but her expression was rather serious. In a while, just follow behind me. Don't cross the tower to kill anyone. I'll fight in the front, and you'll be the last one. That way, you'll get the kill count, Fujio instructed the person beside her as she manipulated the game character. The movie queen's impression of the youngster increased once again. No wonder her indifferent son treated the person in front of her differently and smiled a lot more than before. It was probably because of the young man's personality. He thought about many things and was considerate of others at the first moment. It was really rare. Retreat, there's someone in front of you. Fujio's entire being changed when she played the game. She had a light smile on her lips, and her finger movements were very beautiful. Chapter 456. K.O. Fujio led her men and easily took down the enemy's city. The match took less than 5 minutes. The more the movie queen looked at the youngster, the more handsome she felt. Do you have any intention of developing in our circle? Fujio didn't ask what kind of circle he was in. Instead, she smiled and said, I only play esports, not other circles. It's more than what you're earning from esports. The best actress really wants to poach him. With this kind of temperament, he will definitely be popular in the entertainment industry. The main thing is that the young man's smile was too charming. Fujio curled up her lips. Madam, I think you have some misunderstandings about me. Although part of the reason I play sports is to make money, another part of the reason is that I like this industry, and I like the people in it even more. Every time I see them, I feel very happy. The movie queen heard the youngster's words and put away her phone with a smile. At that moment, she thought of her son. Clearly, playing games wasn't important to him. But even if he was injured, he still wanted to participate because there were teammates he cared about in the esports arena. Perhaps this was the most important thing. Only by fighting side by side with the person he liked could he live up to his youth. No wonder the two of them could become good friends. Because they are similar in some ways. What if I let you play sports for free? The movie queen asked again, since you like it, then why don't you do it? Fujio laughed. I don't want to fight, I want to have fun, but I don't want to play professionally. I'm a realistic person, and no matter what I do, I have to think about survival first before talking about development. With that said, she raised her eyes and glanced at the time on the clock. She gestured to the movie queen that she was going to take a detour. The movie queen didn't stop the youngster. Instead, she looked at the back view and slowly smiled. Not a bad child. However, no one has ever rejected my invitation. Do you think this child loves money or not? Manager Lee thought for a moment and said, a gentleman loves money in a proper way. The movie queen smiled. I'm relieved to have such a person by Mo.'s side. Mo.'s probably likes people who have their own bottom line the most. Manager Lee nodded and wanted to remind him of something. For example, Madam, don't you think that young master and young master Fu are too close? And that couple. Madam, didn't you hear it? As the manager, Manager Lee had to remind him. The internet seems to be matching young master with young master Fu, this is normal. The movie queen didn't think much of it. We've seen a lot in the entertainment industry. Couples who have a good relationship will be paired together. Besides, the two of them are really good together. Don't you think so? How was she supposed to explain this? Manager Lee felt like he was choking. However, movie queen smiled and said, I wonder when their peripherals will be released. I'm going to buy a bunch of them and bring them home. Manager Lee, Fujio didn't realize that she had left a perfect score in front of the movie queen. But when Fujio walked back into the venue, she felt that the beauty looked familiar. However, he couldn't remember where he had seen it before. But she is really beautiful and well maintained, she found him familiar. It was probably because of her appearance disorder. With this thought in mind, Fujio sat back in her seat. Chapter 457. 1 kill, 3 deaths. Lin Feng had already died twice. If he died again, he could be revived again. This was the rule of the esports competition. Feng Shang gritted his teeth as he watched. He stuttered, the members of the Yunzhong battle team are too despicable. They only surrounded brother Lin Feng and fought him alone. Even though Fujio wasn't there just now, she knew what the situation was like. If the other side didn't attack and only attacked one person, it was indeed a little sneaky. Old Jiang sneered. It seems like the outcome is set. Supreme Alliance is going to lose this time. The most vicious thing about the Yunzhong team was that they were still sending messages at this time. Lin Feng, are you scared? Are you hiding under the tower and not daring to come out? I say, we are in the middle lane, why don't you dare to come? If you are too scared with the two of us here, but we are alone here. Do you dare to come? In the face of such provocation. According to Lin Feng's temper, he wouldn't have been able to tolerate it. He had always been a violent person, never a person who could tolerate things. But at this moment, he tolerated it. He thought about a lot of things. Before he came, there was a sign that this would be the last time they would fight side by side. Because they grew up together. He knew how much that person hated losing. He hated losing in a fight. Even if his arm was bleeding, he would still take him to the arena. Someone even said that he didn't know how to play basketball. That guy abandoned his gun at home and went to the court to practice for a month. How could such a person like to lose? Lin Feng would always remember that when he was young, he always played in the mud and crickets, and he liked to bully the girls in the courtyard. At that time, they were just in the first grade of primary school. That guy carried his school bag and looked at him coldly. Lin Feng, if you continue like this, I won't play with you anymore. Lin Feng was annoyed. Why? What did he do wrong? I don't like to be with idiots. That guy glanced at him, and it was extremely cold. To prove that he wasn't an idiot, Lin Feng stopped playing with people casually and studied hard. Whatever that guy learned, he would learn it all. That was true at the beginning. But later, he understood that everyone had their own pride. Don't ask important people to do things they don't like. Don't let an important person lose. Lin Feng moved his fingers and his HP bar was full. Then, he rushed towards the bottom lane again. North of Een Mountain set off at the same time, taking the middle road. The two of them seemed to have discussed this beforehand. Split up. What caught the Yunzhong battle team off guard was that Lin Feng chose to take the bottom lane instead of taking the middle lane because he couldn't take it anymore. One must know that their fighting style was specially trained to deal with Lin Feng. It was all for the sake of annihilating him. Against North of Een Mountain, this strategy was useless. Indeed, it was useless. North of Een Mountain was there to restrain them. On the other side, Lin Feng quickly and accurately took down the second defense tower and was attacking the third one. Retreat and defend. The members of the Yunzhong squad shouted. One of them had no choice but to block Lin Feng at the bottom lane. North of Een Mountain, on the other hand, slashed across the back of the other person and used a critical attack. KO. 2 kills, 3 deaths. The Yunzhong battle team only had one person left now. The moment he heard the sound, Lin Feng quickly turned around and moved beautifully. One to the left, one to the right, he avoided the pursuit until he met up with North of Een Mountain in the wilderness. Then, he used a stun on his opponent. North of Een Mountain followed up with a big move. Perfect coordination. Chapter 458. It's not going to be easy for the Yunzhong team. Shoutcaster Zhang touched his chin. Old Jiang didn't think so. Don't forget that Supreme Alliance has the most casualties now. If Lin Feng dies again, it means that north of Een Mountain is the only one left to fight. Although north of Een Mountain's strength is not bad, he is an old general after all. He can't handle much by himself, so they definitely won't continue to attack. However, old Jiang was once again slapped in the face by his own words. Because of Lin Feng and the others. They continued to sweep past the bottom lane and attack the tower. They overtook them in a short minute. Everyone broke out in cold sweat for the Supreme Alliance. The people from the Yunzhong team didn't die together, so they had to revive one person first before the other. The one who revived first would be sending himself to his death. He couldn't beat two people at all. They couldn't just watch without going out. Hence, they could only use their skills to find Lin Feng's weakness and kill him first. Lin Feng was easily impatient when he played games. As long as he got close, he would bleed. But this time, the opponent found out that he was wrong. Lin Feng actually took a step back and handed the main attack to Yin Wuyao. Then, he used the stun support. K.O. 3 kills and 3 deaths. The city was attacked. Supreme Alliance won. The person who just said he wanted to kill Lin Feng again was stunned. He looked at the figure he had just revived on the city wall. But when he heard the word failure, his face turned pale. The commentator, old Jiang, had completely shut up this time. The fans couldn't help but clap. They weren't Supreme Alliance fans but Yunzhong fans. It had to be said that this match was really exciting. Be it Yin Wuyao or Lin Feng, they charged forward again and again. Such a scene would make people's blood boil just by looking at it. Perhaps they were in different camps but that didn't affect their stubborn admiration. Today, Lin Feng was clearly different. He looked very beautiful in his battle uniform. The first thing he did when he stood up was to look at Yunhu, a big smile on his good-looking face. He was like the most innocent child. However, he realized that Yunhu's expression wasn't very good. What was going on? He had already won, so why was this fellow still putting on airs for him? Hey, you. Before Lin Feng could finish his sentence, Yunhu pulled him over, his voice deep. Look, I'll help you kill your way back no matter what they said about you. When Lin Feng heard that, he said, "You're a good brother." Fu Jiu shook her head. With how slow Lin Feng was, it was impossible for Yunhu's wish to come true. However, that was not important now. Most importantly, Qin Mo was about to go on stage. Everyone seemed to be waiting for this scene. How much better was Qin Mo's hand? Would he still have the same beautiful and unparalleled skills as before? All the cameras at the scene were aimed at him. Just like that, Qin Mo stood up. His handsome face could really make people scream in an instant. In fact, Supreme Alliance had endured for too long. Ever since he arrived at this arena, he had been looked down upon by the commentator. Just based on this point, Supreme Alliance was going to get back at them. Not to mention Qin Mo, a person who wouldn't allow his little brother to be bullied. Almost everyone in the arena could feel the aura coming from Qin Mo. It was completely different from when he was sitting on the chair. Just now, he was more like an elegant military advisor, pointing at the country without any sharpness. Chapter 459. The 5v5 was different from the previous 2 matches. The members of Supreme Alliance sat down in unison, looking indescribably handsome. They put on their headphones and adjusted their keyboards. This kind of scene could only be seen in the esports arena. The fans couldn't contain their excitement. Almighty Qin's face on the screen was so handsome that it moved their hearts. Go. There was only one word. The accompanying sound system of the game ended. The entire Supreme Alliance team moved out. Feng Shang and Coco went up and down respectively. Yunhu and Fatty were in the group. Qin Mo went wild and assisted in killing people. It had only been less than 2 minutes. Old Jiang, who had said that the Supreme Alliance team would definitely lose this time, was speechless now. The members of the Yunzhong team died one after another. It could even be said that they couldn't withstand a single blow. In fact, the Yunzhong team's ability wasn't like this. It was just that they underestimated their opponent. During the 1v1, Ling Xiao appeared. During the 2v2, they sent their elites. For the remaining group battles, even if the Yunzhong team had Ling Xiao, they still needed 2 people to stop Qin Emo. What's more, Ling Xiao wasn't there. He was now sitting in the preparation area, his face ashen. His hands were clenched tightly by his sides. Team, annihilated. When the sound effects of the crushing came, the light in the eyes of the Yunzhong team seemed to have been killed. The Supreme Alliance team's playing style this time seemed to be deliberate. It was mainly because of the Almighty's order. There were only 3 words: kill to the end. No one could resist that kind of ruthlessness. It seemed to be saying, didn't you say that our people only knew how to hide? Didn't you say that our people were cowards? Then this time we will crush them head on. The 5 of them really did this. Their hand speed was very fast. The Yunzhong team was most afraid of Qin Mo, so they sent 3 people to surround him. 1v3, it was impossible for Qin Mo not to lose HP. But just as he was losing HP, KO. One of the opponents died. Double kill. The second opponent died. The third opponent chased Qin Mo all the way. Just when he thought he had killed Qin Mo first used a big move to stun him, then turned around and used medicine to recover his HP. The shadow of his sword spun and held up a huge wind. If Fu Jiu's fighting style was based on his hand speed, Qin Mo's forte lay in his positioning. No one could see him clearly. They only knew that he killed people within 10 miles without leaving a trace. The light that lit up around him almost covered the entire screen. People watched as the last person in the cloud fell down heavily. The sound effect that shook the bloodline rang out again. 3. Kill. Qin Mo stood there with only a sliver of HP left on his armor. That technique. None of the Qin fans who were familiar with him did not know about the 3000 knife slash. That was the true meaning of the 3000 knife slash. Back then, someone had used this name to describe Qin Mo's fighting style. This was because he was the only one in the entire esports arena who could complete a triple kill even when his HP was low. It was only for a moment. All the fans in the venue stood up. As if they were ignited by fire, they shouted the same name at the same time. Qin Mo. Not only in the venue, but also on the internet, the number of views had exceeded 100 million. Old Jiang, who had previously said that Qin Mo might degenerate due to his injury, was now red from the slap. Not to mention, the Yunzhong battle team was unable to recover from the setback. Supreme Alliance won. Chapter 460. That was a slap in the face. The people from Yunzhong couldn't even lift their heads. Old Jiang was even more so. When the camera shone on his face, he wished he could disappear on the spot. In fact, since the end of the duo match, Supreme Alliance had already won. But before, they could say that they had underestimated their opponent or that it was Supreme Alliance's strategy. Now, they had nothing to say. They were wiped out 3 times. Supreme Alliance didn't give them a chance to fight back. Some of the audience who said that there was nothing to see in this match were now silent. Their eyes were shaking, and they really didn't know what to say. This was just a regional match. Supreme Alliance was already like this. What about in the future? What would it be like? Uncontrollably, everyone began to look forward to the next match. Perhaps this was the reason why Qin Mo was named the most valuable esports player. Every time he played, it was hot-blooded and touched people's hearts. Fu Jiu just stood there. She didn't know why, but at that moment, she felt that the Almighty was extraordinarily handsome. Yeah, just for a moment. More handsome than her. Probably because the Almighty's side profile was always full of indifference and righteousness. The people around Fujio had never been like this. How to put it? No matter what he did, he looked like a top student. Even if he was as handsome as the devil. But on the inside, he was very upright. Fujio thought that this might be the difference between her and the Almighty. It was really rare to see such an unwavering person like the Almighty. His righteousness was as dazzling as the light. Fujio laughed. If it was the old her, she definitely wouldn't have anything to do with the Almighty. Because, from a certain point of view, she didn't want to meet this kind of person. She envied him, but she could never become him. She was destined to live in the dark. Hurry up and hug me, how long are you going to look for? Chin Mo walked to the youngster and smiled faintly. Are you crying because of my handsomeness? Fujio suddenly felt that the smile was a little familiar. She showed her white teeth. Yeah, I'm crying because of my handsomeness. Oh right, brother Mo, let me ask you something. Do you have any cousins? No. Chin Mo's eyes were very faint. Fujio smiled. If there are any cousins that you can introduce to me, I will marry them. As long as they look like you, they will definitely look good. Aya, little spade, your compliment skills are fine. Lin Feng stood over. Even if you want to suck up to Captain, you can't do it this way, understand? Mind your integrity. However, Chin Mo wasn't in a good mood after being praised. Marry her? Was he going to marry a woman? Chin Mo glanced at the youngster who was still smiling. The more he looked, the tighter his chest became. He decided to knock the youngster's head. I asked you to hug me, understand? Yes, a hug. Fujio smiled, opened her arms, and hugged Chin Mo handsomely. Brother Mo, we won. His nostrils were filled with the fragrance of the youngster's grass and the sweetness of the lollipop. When he placed his hand on the youngster's back, he couldn't bear to let go. It was probably because it was too comfortable, like the softness of a quilt after sunning. It made him want to stay like this. Fujio was a little stiff. She thought that he would let go after a short hug. After all, this was what her teammates did just now. She also knew that the Almighty didn't have any other intentions. Because the Almighty hugged her like he was hugging a brother. Chapter 461. Fujio was glad that it was winter again. Her chest was wrapped in bandages, and she was still wearing her uniform. As long as they weren't that close, it would be fine. Chin Mo also felt that he had hugged the young man for a long time, but he didn't let go. He didn't push the young man away until the CP fans started taking pictures excitedly. However, just this scene alone was enough for the girls to start a series of imagination. They wanted to ask, Almighty Chin, are you sure you aren't just giving out candy? Oh, there was another theme. The first match of the first round was so exciting, so of course there should be a celebration. This was completely in line with Manager Feng's rich personality. Dinner was booked at the biggest hotel in Lincheng. Chin Mo had to deal with some company matters in addition to being the captain of the Supreme Alliance, so he would be late. Shui Yaoyao was sitting next to Fujio. The entire private room was filled with Supreme Alliance members. It was still bustling when the door was pushed open. First, it was the waiter. The waiter seemed to be very polite to the people who came and led the way for them. But when Fujio saw the newcomer, she raised her eyebrows. Wasn't this the lady who said she was a fan in front of the vending machine today? Almost instantly, Fujio felt the atmosphere around her change a little. She couldn't tell what it was like. But Lin Feng's hand that was drinking red wine froze, and Yun, who also sat upright on the side. It was a bit like a junior high student meeting their class teacher. Fujio looked sideways. What was going on? I told you they were here, the movie queen said, smiling elegantly at Fujio. Almighty, we meet again. Pfft. Hearing the word, Almighty, Lin Feng couldn't help coughing heavily. He subconsciously winked at Fujio, as if asking, how do you know my goddess? Why does my goddess call you almighty? Fujio really couldn't understand what he meant. She stood up casually and said politely, Madam, I'm very sorry. I don't know how you found your way here, but this is a private gathering of our team. We don't want to be disturbed, so we can't play games with you this time. Hearing that, Lin Feng directly grabbed Fujio's sleeve, which meant to say, sit down, sit down. Fujio continued to raise her eyebrows. Was she impolite just now? Movie queen, that's the movie queen. Lin Feng was still reminding them. On the other side, the movie queen was already laughing. As expected of Spade Z, you have such a personality. Honestly, are you really not going to join our industry? The people in our circle are much prettier than those in the esports circle. You still don't have a girlfriend, right? I can help you with the introduction. Your face and the look in your eyes are simply perfect. Fujio didn't finish. Lin Feng interrupted the youngster's words. He said he can consider it. Fujio. Is this how you betray your teammate? Surprisingly, Yunhu didn't bother with Lin Feng. What was going on? In reality, Yunhu didn't care about Lin Feng because he knew something that even Lin Feng didn't know. He had vaguely heard about the identity of this movie queen from his father's generation, but how was he supposed to warn little Spade? Besides, will the captain let us talk about it? More importantly, how did little Spade get to know him? There should be no intersection between the two lines. Yunhu furrowed his brows. On the other side, the movie queen persisted. Don't worry, filming won't affect your gaming. When you want to play, you can come back, but... Chapter 462. It was Qin Mo. He had just come from the business world and was dressed in private clothes. The fluffy collar of his black coat contrasted with the side of his face, making his appearance seem even more noble and unparalleled. But as soon as he said that, Fujio was dumbfounded. What did the Almighty call the person in front of her? Mom? Mom? Not only Fujio, but all the other team members except Yun, who looked like they were struck by lightning. The movie queen was Captain's mother? That was too shocking. It would be more accurate to call them siblings. After all, the movie queen looked really young. She didn't look like someone who had a son in his 20s at all. In fact, movie queen got married early, and she also had Qin Mo early. Plus, she took good care of herself, and her skin was very good. Most importantly, her skin was in good condition. So in the eyes of outsiders, she looked like she was just 30 years old. No one would have thought that she was already a mother. Fujio's smile was a bit stiff. How should she put it? The Almighty's mother was her fan. This was too embarrassing. Movie queen didn't think much of it. After being caught by her son, she still held onto Fujio's arm. I just came to cheer you on, and to meet the Almighty who plays games with me. The Almighty who plays games with you? Qin Mo raised his eyebrows and looked at the embarrassed young man. Fujio really wanted to die. That pair of beautiful eyes quietly conveyed a message. Brother Mo, I really didn't know this was Auntie. Qin Mo looked at the young man's expression and curled up the corner of his mouth. Fujio continued to raise her eyebrows, meaning, come and save me. Qin Mo was a big brother after all. Even if he liked to see the embarrassed young man, he wouldn't let it go on for too long. Beautyan, the Almighty you are talking about will not join your circle. He is my team member. The movie queen really felt that her son was too indifferent, and the young man looked better. So she held on to Fujio's arm and didn't let go. Almighty, you can contact me anytime after you've made up your mind. Manager Lee was also quite embarrassed. After all, it was hard to say that someone like Madam, who was trying to poach a young master so openly. The members of the Supreme Alliance looked at each other and continued to be wallflowers in silence. Fujio chuckled and felt that she had to reject the offer. Auntie, I'm sorry. I'm not interested in the entertainment industry. Movie Queen wouldn't force him to do something he didn't want to do. She sighed. All right then, there will be chances in the future. But that isn't important. As a fan, I'm already happy to be able to interact with you so closely. By the way, you're really handsome. Let me know when the merchandise comes out, I'll get someone to order 999 sets. Fujio. She felt that the Almighty's family was so rich. Come, don't be so formal, sit down. Movie Queen continued, her smile revealing 2 dimples. I'll just stay here for a while, I won't disturb your gathering. Lin Feng immediately said, it's okay if Auntie stays to eat. Movie Queen replied calmly, I'll stay. Fujio, but looking at it this way, she finally understood where the Almighty's etiquette came from. Even though she was saying such words, her beauty was indescribable. Her elegance seemed to emanate from within. It seemed like the Almighty's good looks were mostly inherited from the Movie Queen. The Movie Queen was a very easy person to get along with. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.